Hey everybody, welcome back to the Frugal Filmmaker Q&A, the show where if you're not careful, all your sound will end up in the right channel or it may end up in the left channel. So be sure and check your panning tool in your editor. Make sure that it's centered so you get sound in both channels. Remember, if you'd like your question read on the show, send me an email to frugalfilmmaker@gmail.com. That's the best chance you'll have of hearing your question on this show. Or you can leave a comment below, or you can send me a message on Twitter and ask me there. My video last week was all about the importance of hair and makeup. And hair and makeup is a department, it's really self-explanatory, but you may have never had a hair and makeup department on your set, but it's really important, so please check that out if this interests you at all. Our first comment actually comes from a comment in that video, the hair and makeup video, from YouTuber Noise Puppet, who says, "Who's going to pay for all this? Having a hair and makeup department takes you out of micro-budget territory and puts you firmly in low budget. Now you need the movie to pay itself off with actual dollars. I've noticed a lot of this in what I might call miniature Hollywood philosophy in the no/micro-budget movie advice world, and I wonder if it misses the whole point of outsider filmmaking." Well, this is a really interesting comment, although I don't necessarily believe this, even though I understand what you're saying, because you're of the belief that this is going to cost a bunch more money in your budget that you don't have. Now, if you don't have money to spend, obviously you're not going to spend it. However, I think that you can get quality hair and makeup people if you just look for them. There was a really good comment in that video from YouTuber La La Land who said that if you go to the website Model Mayhem, you can actually look for makeup artists there, and they have a search tool you can put in your state and your city, and you can find people that are willing to do hair and makeup there. And their levels of compensation vary, of course, just like anybody else. But just like any other job on a film set, you can find volunteers. You can find people that are willing to want to get experience and use them on your film, just like actors, just like director of photography, just like gaffers or whatever. It's just the same as any department. You just have to be willing to look for these people. And like I said in the video, maybe offer to replace the makeup that they use or reimburse them. I think that's an easy request and it won't cost you very much. At the same time, like in my case, for my short film, I had volunteers who just said, don't worry about it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with looking for extra departments or by staffing extra departments in your movie, even if you don't have any money to spend. Because if you have a good reputation, or if people know you, or you've been networking like you should, you will have people wanting to help you and wanting to get experience on your movie. Now, not always, I realize that. I'm not a special case, though. So I think that it just takes a little bit of effort. And you can have departments that are in typical Hollywood movies, just on a much smaller scale, if you're willing to put in the legwork to get them. Because any extra details I think you can add to your movie will only make your film better. And that, which is why I made this video. I think it's really important to notice and appreciate that and give these people a chance to shine, which just makes your movie shine. Our next question comes from email. This is from Rush, who says, "I run trails anywhere from 15 to 25 miles. I've started shooting some video with my iPhone 5S while I'm running, and I'm wondering if you could share any thoughts on how I could frugally improve the quality via some kind of lightweight handheld mount that I could run through the woods with." This is an interesting request. My first thought is, wow, you're holding a camera for 15 to 25 miles when you're running. That's a lot of holding your camera up. I would be very tired, very tired doing that, even though I've done some running in the past, never at this length. But the only thing I can really think of is if you'd had some kind of gimbal stabilizer, the electronic gimbal stabilizer, which they have 2-axis gimbals that aren't that expensive, that could smooth out your shots if you're running for that length of time. They're just a little pistol grip, and you could put your phone in there. They make them. Those are probably the least expensive gimbals that do this, and they're not super cheap. I mean, you're still going to pay $500 for a stabilizer like that, but I can't think of any other stabilizer that you can operate with one hand that is going to give you a smooth shot. I mean, you can always go the traditional counterbalance stabilizer, like a glide cam or a steady cam type thing that's just on a much smaller scale, but you're also running and you only have one hand. Usually those stabilizers take two hands, so that you can, when you turn corners, you can turn with them. And the nice thing about a gimbal stabilizer is that when you turn the pistol grip, they will turn with you because it's motorized. But it's a lot of money to spend, so if you're looking for something cheap, I have no idea what to recommend for you that would fulfill your requirements, what you're asking for here. If there's anybody out there that has an idea about maybe some kind of Frugal rig, I know I made a Frugal stabilizer a long time ago, or the Frugal floater, which was a Steadicam Merlin style stabilizer, but I would never try running with that thing for a long period of time without having my second hand to work it. In fact, I wouldn't even try running with that. That was just a walking stabilizer, really. Our next question is from Tyler Van Allen, who says, "For my current project, I'm shooting an extremely low-lit situation with a haze machine. I reduced the ISO to 1250 and increased my key light, but it loses so much of the artistic haze of the lights in the test photo. It just seems way too dark. Am I missing something? key that would allow me to keep the lighting characteristics in the test photo but get rid of the noise and grain. Now, I didn't read all of Tyler's message here, but he talks about having a Canon 5D Mark II, and all the settings he told me looked good. The frame rate and the shutter speed and everything looked fine. But he had high grain because he had his ISO cranked up. Then he took it down and added light, but it was still grainy. And I don't have a Canon 5D Mark II. Maybe if someone else out there does, they can comment below. But my first thought is your 5D Mark II just isn't good in the light. And the sensor is struggling, the image is breaking down, because even though you're increasing the key and all those lights that I saw that you had, the image is still going to break down in the darkness because your sensor can't handle the dark. So I'm not exactly sure what to tell you other than maybe try a different camera, which I know isn't what you want to hear. If you go to a site like borrowlenses.com or Lens Rentals, they'll have cameras that you could rent over the weekend. Really good cameras, the Sony A7S, I believe, you could rent over the weekend for like $100. That's an excellent low light camera. Or something else, just do your homework. But I'm thinking that the 5D Mark II is the problem. It sounds like you're doing everything right. You're lowering the ISO and you're raising your lighting, but there's still dark areas that are going to break down. And I mentioned, you're losing the quality of the haze. So you might want to check out a camera that's going to give you more of what you want. And I don't think the 5D Mark II is it. But I could be wrong. Comment below if anyone else has a better idea, but that's my suggestion, and maybe a inexpensive rental of another DSLR might be the answer for you. Our next question is from Craig Whedon, who says, there is some debate on the best shotgun mic to use on set. I wanted your thoughts on a model that you prefer and works well. The other question is, what type of sound recorder would you recommend? We are on a micro budget. We want to make sure the sound is really good. Well, I recently made a video which was called 4 Mics, 1 Location, where I took all the mics that I have, a shotgun mic, a Rode mic, an on-camera mic, a lav mic, and I used them all in the same exact place with the same sound characteristics, so you kind of see the difference between the mics. And I've really had experience with only one shotgun mic. That's the Sennheiser ME66. It's a nice kind of middle of the road XLR mic. It's not super cheap. It's $500, but it's a solid mic. There's no moving parts in it, so it lasts forever as long as you don't drop it in a river. It's a solid mic, and you can hear what it sounds like in that video. Now, I know a lot of people have had success with really inexpensive shotgun microphones. There's a kind of one that's been going around on eBay from China for a long time. It's about 30 bucks that people use a lot. And they seem to get decent sound out of it because they know where to place that microphone. If you have a good microphone, make sure it's just out of camera range and point it at your actor's mouth, and it's really close as possible, because a cheap mic in the right position will sound a lot better than an expensive mic in the wrong position, meaning far away. So make sure your mic is placed in the right spot. I'll give you a link below to that import mic that a lot of people seem to be using. As far as recorders go, I use the Zoom H1, but I'm also using it with an XLR adapter. And if you're looking for a good recorder, if you're just going to go out and buy a recorder because you care about your sound, obviously, there's the Tascam DR40, which has XLR inputs. It's the cheapest or most inexpensive recorder that has XLR inputs, so that's what I would recommend. It's a solid recorder. But now you might be saying, oh, well, this isn't exactly frugal because you're recommending a $500 mic and a $200 recorder. That's $700. However, I'm all about being frugal, but before you scoff at what I'm telling you, just think about how much you spend on your camera. And then I think you should at least apply that much money to what you're spending on sound if you really care about sound. And if you believe, like I do, that sound is half the experience as the visuals, then you don't mind spending that much money. If you don't want to do that, maybe you can spend half of what you spend on your camera. But be prepared to spend some money. If you're going to back up that statement where you say, we want to make sure that the sound is really good, because not only does it take proper technique, but you're going to have to invest a little bit. I mean, at the very least, I would say, invest in that cheap Chinese mic, 30 bucks, and then a Zoom H1, because that microphone will go right into the Zoom H1, and there you go. That's some decent, barely decent equipment, and you're spending $120. So, or even less if you're going on eBay and getting something used. So just be prepared to spend something, because it is important. And again, if you're going to say we care about high quality sound, then be prepared to do something about that. Finally, we have a question from last week's Q&A, a comment from that video, which was from William Perry, who says, have you ever heard of and do you belong to groups or film clubs of beginners where members share crewing positions to produce each other's projects? And the answer to this question, as far as I'm concerned, is yes and no. Yes, I just graduated with my master's degree not too long ago, and so I know a ton of people from film school. In fact, this next project that I'm working on, A Bullet for Roger, I had a bunch of people ready to go, which is a great reason to go to film school, is because you can build up all these relationships while you're spending the 2 or 3 or 4 years getting to know everybody, and you know who does what and who's good at what. And then when you need to make a movie, you can just say, hey, can you do this, this, this? And you have an instant crew. Now, if you didn't go to film school or you don't have those kind of relationships, are you asking me, is there an online resource? I don't know of one. I know they're out there, though. I know there's groups that you could, there's crewing groups and things like that, but I don't know if they're asking for pay or not. You'd have to investigate those. Maybe somebody could leave a link below to a group like that. There's always the Facebook group, too, the Frugal Filmmaker Facebook group, where you could actually ask around and see what people live in what area and maybe ask them to get together. A long time ago on a Q&A video, I talked about the Frugal Crew, which was kind of talking about exactly what you're thinking, which is where you get a bunch of people together online and you talk about almost like a meet and greet where you get together and make a movie over a weekend or whatever. And someone said, you know, you might want to be careful about that because even though it's kind of a cool concept, you don't know anybody that way. Unlike a situation where you've been to school with them or class or whatever, you just know them. You know what they're good at, you know what they aren't good at, and you have no idea what you're getting unless you're going to go through an interview process, you know, where you ask for a portfolio or things like that. So that might not always be the best situation. You might want to get to know these people first, or maybe work on their movies, or have something that you've done with them or that they've done with you, so they can kind of prove themselves before you give them an important position. And I think I agree with that. I think that's a good idea. So do your homework and you'll be fine. I'd like to thank everyone who wrote in for this show. And if you'd like your question read on the show, please send it to thefrugalfilmmaker@gmail.com. That's your best chance of having it read on the show. You can also comment below. I might pull it from there, or send me a message on Twitter @frugalfilmmaker. This next week I should have another video Thursday or Friday, and then another Q&A on Monday. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.